Ever since the first instalment of the Grand Theft Auto franchise, the series has been surrounded in controversy due to its realistic depiction of violence, crime and gore. All of these games are built at their core with criminality in mind, allowing Rockstar to create unique and gritty stories about the many moving parts of the criminal underworld. Most of these games will have you follow the life of a criminal with little to no freedom from that premise. The only slight exception to this being the game GTA Online, where you have the freedom to choose who you are and what you want to do. Of course, much like the other games, 99% of everything you can do in this game is completely against the law. But what if we tried everything in our power to thrive and survive in GTA Online without ever committing a single crime? If this sounds stupid to you, believe me, you don't even know the half of it. So before we get into this, I'm going to lay down some ground rules. Obviously, I'm not allowed to commit a single crime. No running red lights, no stealing vehicles, no theft, etc. I'll also be doing my absolute best not to kill anyone, even in situations where it could be considered self-defense. As the fictional city of Los Santos is based on the real-life city of Los Angeles, I'll be trying my best to abide by California's laws. And for the final rule, I'll be doing this challenge completely solo. No one will be allowed to help me make money. My end goal for this video is just to reach $1 million. However, if you guys enjoy this, I wouldn't mind making a part 2. Now that all of that is out of the way, let's start our journey to be a goody two-shoes in a world filled with toxicity and explosions. The first thing on our to-do list is to create our character. I decided to give him some pretty basic brown hair, some freckles, and some baby blues. And after spending an embarrassingly long time thinking of a name for this guy, I eventually decided to go with Nigel. After pressing accept and taking his mugshot, it just then dawned on me that I have literally no plan as to how I'm going to be doing this. But alas, I was now locked in and ready to face whatever this challenge would throw at me. I chose to go through with the tutorial, and after watching this shockingly outdated introduction, Nigel finally arrives in the city of Saints. After getting off the plane, we are greeted by a suspicious individual known as Lamar, and after a bit of chit-chat we enter his car. Not even 10 seconds off the plane and we almost immediately fail this challenge, as Lamar gives us a loaded and untraceable firearm.
Untraceable.
California is known for having some of the most restricted gun laws in the US. You are generally prohibited from openly carrying any kind of loaded firearm. As this is a cutscene however, I obviously can't do much about it, but don't worry, I'll be sure to hand this weapon in to the proper authorities the first chance I get. In the meantime, Lamar drives us around Los Santos whilst telling us about some pretty shady jobs that we can do to make some money, which we obviously won't be doing. After a couple of minutes, Lamar parks his car and then challenges us to a race, which unfortunately, as we are still locked into the tutorial, we have no choice but to participate in it. As soon as the race starts, I try my best to obey all traffic laws. However, as I'm from England where we drive on the left side of the road, I found this surprisingly difficult. As I waited at red lights and gave way to pedestrians, everyone else sped past me, and to the surprise of no one, I lost. As soon as the race timer ended, for whatever reason, my car went into auto drive mode and started to drive recklessly, as I clearly wasn't in control and I couldn't do anything to stop it. I'm not counting this as a fail on the challenge. After the race, Lamar forces us to do a job for him, but he doesn't give us many details as to what it entails. Since we're still in the tutorial, we have no choice but to comply. After the cutscene ends, I realise that I've been put in a car with another player, and he's the one behind the wheel. Panicking, I quickly jump out as I don't want to be associated with this maniac. I then quit the job through my phone. And of course, in typical GTA fashion, I get stuck in an infinite loading screen and have to restart my game. Once I get back in, the same job starts up, but thankfully this time I'm by myself. As I'm about to drive off, I stop and think of something. Is this vehicle actually insured in my name? And is it road legal? Without wanting to take the risk, I decided to walk to the mission objective instead, which took a hell of a lot longer than I thought it would. When I arrived there, I walked up to these kind gentlemen and politely told them that I was here to pick something up, to which they responded,
"Get the fuck out of here, bitch! This is our hood! Where you gonna go?"
Luckily, dying isn't a crime in California, but engaging in combat with a whole gang of armed men and stealing their illegal substances definitely is. As this clearly wasn't in the job description, I quickly quit the job, but to my dismay, I was once again forced into starting the job. I had no way to pass this mission without doing something illegal, and therefore it was impossible to progress. This run was over before it even truly started, and the only way to get past this was to skip the whole tutorial altogether. And that's exactly what I did. I deleted the old Nigel and made a new Nigel, but this time I skipped the tutorial. And finally, after wasting over an hour, I was in free mode. The first thing I saw when I spawned in was two players ramming into each other with their cars. As to not get involved with these unlawful individuals, I left and made myself a private session. This is where the real journey begins. I have no money, no cars, no house, just the clothes on my back and a strong moral compass by my side. I was ready to take this illegitimate weld on. The first thing I did was hand in this illegal firearm over to the cops. Once that was done, I then brainstormed some ways to get myself some easy and clean money. My first thought was to head to the shooting range, as it was relatively close by and just because I needed a legal way to blow off some steam. After playing for a few minutes, I decided to call it quits to check how much money I made so far, and I'm happy to report that I made absolutely nothing. The only thing I got was a measly 10 RP. At this point, I was starting to question if this challenge was even possible, and if I was just wasting my time. However, still hanging on to what little hope I had, I thought that a game of tennis would surely give me a little bit of money at least. After walking all the way to the nearest tennis court, I quickly came to realise that I wasn't even a high enough level to play tennis. I thought that there was literally no way to make money at the start without breaking some rules. But then I remembered something. There are 100 collectible action figures which are strewn around the map, each one giving you $1,000 and 1000 RP. Feeling encouraged again, I looked up a map of all of the action figures and went for the ones that were closest to me. Although this is a good beginner way to get some money, it's still a excruciatingly long process, as I had to either walk or get a cab to the figure locations. It must have took me just over an hour to make 5k. I quickly came to realise that I needed a better mode of transportation if I wanted to collect these action figures more efficiently, so I saved up $5,000 for a Fargio, which if you don't know is a cheap but pretty crappy moped. After going to purchase it, I was told that I first needed a garage to store it in. I reluctantly looked up the cheapest garage, and cringed when I saw that it cost $25,000. This meant I was going to have to collect 25 more of these figures just by walking and using cabs. Not wanting to sit through hours of this, I did the only thing someone in my position would do when they're in desperate need of money. I tried my luck at the casino. After paying the VIP fee of $500, I spun the lucky wheel and prayed for something good. My prayers were answered, as with one spin I managed to win $40,000. At this point I was ecstatic. I could buy a garage, a Fargio, and still have a ton of money left over, and that's exactly what I did. And now that I had a decent mode of transport, collecting these action figures will be a lot easier. Of course, there were some which I couldn't collect as I needed to trespass in order to get to them, but despite that, I was actually starting to rack up a bit of money. Just to prove that I haven't committed a crime up until this point, here's a quick overview of my stats. Anyway, now that I was a high enough level, I had access to games such as tennis, darts, and golf. I tried all of them in hopes of them paying out some money, but none of them did. That's when I tried out flight school, and holy cow, that was the best thing I've done yet. If you get a gold medal on one of these challenges, you can win upwards of $30,000. The best thing about it is that it seems to be completely legal. I spent an hour grinding these out until I got gold on everything. Once I had finished, I had over $250,000. Okay, things were starting to get quite serious now. The only issue is that replaying these flight school missions only gives you a fraction of what you earned the first time, so it's very much a one-time thing. I was starting to realise that I had no repeatable way to make money, as all of the ways I've made money so far have all been one-off occurrences that can't be repeated. To hopefully find a solution to this, I went to the jobs menu and tried to look for a job that will be completely legal but still has a good payout. Stuff like deathmatches, last team standings and captures were all out of the question, as they all needed another player to start them. All contact missions were out too, as they all involved doing something illegal. The only two jobs that I could realistically do was either races, assuming that they are legally done, and parachuting. I found parachuting to be the slightly better option, as they could be done slightly faster than a race, and also had a better payout. So with no other option, I cracked on and grinded out these parachute jumps, easily doing 40 plus. Doing these parachute jumps got me an average of $1,000 every minute, which is a lot better than collecting action figures, but it's still pretty terrible, so I decided to brainstorm some other ways to make money. I remembered that there was some daily treasure that you could find in a shipwreck, which would give you $20,000. The money was good, but once again it's just not sustainable. Just when I thought that I was going to have to stick with these parachute jumps, I got a text from Maud, asking if I was willing to do some bounty hunting. This was a very intriguing offer, as doing these bounty hunts would pay a pretty penny. The only issue is that I would have to either kill or beat these bounties into submission, which is obviously illegal, especially as good old Nigel here hasn't got a license to be doing these bounty hunts. However, if I could make one of these bounties accidentally kill himself in a very unfortunate accident in which I had no involvement nor set up in any way, then I would likely complete the bounty, and walk away with my morally questionable but still completely clean money, and that's exactly what I aim to do. After being told the rough location of our first bounty target as well as what he looked like, I parked up in the area and began my search. I found the guy a little while later and approached him. As soon as I got close, he got mad and began assaulting me. As any normal civilian would do, I called the police whilst running around in circles. When the cops eventually showed up, I tried to get their attention by letting the guy punch me in front of them, but they didn't even seem the least bit concerned. They just watched on, emotionless, as I was getting my arse handed to me. Then they just drove off and carried on with their day. I called them a second time, but once again they were utterly useless. As it was very clear that the police wasn't going to help me, I led the bounty to a nearby gang of armed bikers, who are usually very jumpy, but even they didn't seem to care. I then tried to get creative by leading the bounty onto the highway, hoping that he will have an unfortunate accident. However, as I also needed to follow traffic laws, when I was on the highway I couldn't stop or even slow down, causing me to go too far away from the target, which in turn failed the mission. In hindsight, this was a really bad idea. Luckily, not long later, another bounty target shows up, this time in Sandy Shores. When I get there, I realise that the guy was actually armed with a knife and was hell-bent on stabbing me with it. As this was a bit more serious than the last bounty, I tried calling the cops again to see if they would do anything about this crazed lunatic trying to kill me. But as I should have expected, they just watched on as the guy literally stabs me to death, which caused me to yet again fail the mission. It became abundantly clear that if I wanted to dispatch these bounties without getting my hands dirty, I had to be more creative about it. Our next bounty target was located directly in the middle of the city, surrounded by huge skyscrapers. This gave me an excellent idea. I lured our friend here over to a nearby alleyway, which just so happens to have ladders that led right to the top of the building. When you're this high up, one small slip is game over. I lured the guy all the way to the top and tried all different kinds of tricks to get him near the edge, but he wasn't having any of it. I eventually noticed this really precarious ladder that was quite difficult to use. I wanted to see how Mr. Bounty Man here would tackle this obstacle, and as it turns out, he didn't handle it very well. Now that was quite the fall, but the guy just shrugged it off and kept coming after me. I tried it again, thinking that he surely must be on very low health after that fall, but no, he took another plummet like a champ and got up like nothing happened. I tried it for a third time, and once again, he just politely refused to die. I must say, I admire this guy's determination. Unfortunately, while I was trying to make him fall for a fourth time, I ended up falling victim to this poorly designed ladder, and I fall 2 stories to my death. This was a tragic blow to my self-esteem. In an attempt to forget about how I just got completely outplayed by an NPC, I played a couple of parachute jumps to clear my head. After gaining back my will to live, I once again attempted another bounty. This time, our target was located right next to Vespucci Beach, which was actually very handy, as the next 2 methods of killing him that I thought of involved the beach. I first tried to lure him over to one of these fire pits in an attempt to get him to walk over it, but as it turns out, he was smart enough to walk around it, so that was a bust. My final idea was to drown him in the ocean. Simply walking into the ocean with him wouldn't work, as he would never follow me in. It's almost like he's deathly afraid of the water. In order to make him overcome his fear, I lured him onto the pier and down onto this little pontoon. But just like last time, no matter how much I tried to convince him, he would never step foot in the ocean. That's when something unexpected happened. I just so happened to dive into the water at the exact time he was lunging for me, which caused him to stack it and fall face first into the sea. As soon as he fell in, he attempted to find his way back up. However, due to his inexperience with swimming, he died a few seconds later. It was a truly unfortunate and unpreventable accident, which I just so happened to benefit from. May he rest in peace. Anyway, that's 1 down, 4 more to go. The second bounty was at the Quartz Centre. From experience, I know that the security guards at this place are very trigger happy and don't like it when you enter the place at night, so I had to wait until day before entering the museum. After finding the bounty and having her give chase to me, I decided to lure her towards one of these trigger-happy guards. However, as I really should have learnt by now, it didn't work. In fact, the opposite happened. He started to open fire on me, which got me a 1-star wanted level for literally no reason. After the dude shot me dead and let the bounty go free, I was there gobsmacked, as my once perfect stats were now tainted with a 1-star wanted level. And to top it off, my beloved Fargio got impounded. I begrudgingly took a cab all the way to the impound lot and paid the $200 fine. And now that I was reunited with my moped, I headed straight to the next bounty. You know the deal by now. I went to the area, I got him angry and I made him chase me. I wanted to try the drowning method again as it worked like a charm last time, but unfortunately the closest pier from me was on the other side of the Alamo Sea, which, let me tell you, took a painfully long time to get to. When I got there, I pulled the old bait and switch on him and he fell into the water. A few seconds later, he was swimming with the fishes. That's 2 down, 3 to go. The third bounty was very luckily located directly on Del Perro Pier. I quite literally couldn't ask for a better spawn. I went down there and tried the same method as before, but surprisingly she managed to get herself back up. I tried it again, thinking that it was just some kind of fluke, but no. Every time she fell in, she would almost immediately make her way back up. It seems like I've finally found a bounty who's a confident swimmer. I made my way back up the pier to think of another way to terminate her. That's when I saw this completely open ledge here without any railings. This is a serious health and safety hazard that we can take full advantage of. I lured her to this ledge and tried to make her dive in with me. After failing multiple times to pull this off, she eventually fell in. And with nowhere for her to go, she eventually succumbed to the waves. That leaves only 2 more bounties left until I get my hands on a big payday. The 4th bounty basically played out the same. I got her angry, made her chase me, and jumped into the water at the last minute. Now that I knew what to do, this was becoming very easy. On to the final bounty. She was in Sandy Shores, so once again I employed the same method. I ran around the Alamo Sea, went to this wooden pier, and jumped into the water last minute. And just like that, my suffering was over. All 5 bounties were finally completed. As a reward, Maud gave me the location of a nearby treasure chest. It was finally time to claim my $300,000 that I was promised. I went to the chest location and opened it up. To my absolute horror, I got no money whatsoever. The only thing that I got was this old looking stone hatchet. As it turns out, you only get the $300,000 if you kill 25 people with the stone hatchet. I was absolutely gutted. Not only did I just waste literally half a day going for these bounties, but now I own a dangerous weapon which I could not drop. I decided that the best course of action would be to stuff the axe so far in my pockets that I would forget I even had it. Besides, I could potentially pass it off as an antique artifact anyway. At this point, I had tried literally everything I could think of, but it still wasn't enough. I drove around aimlessly for about 10 minutes. I then decided to park up somewhere nice and cinematic. As I gazed over the horizon, I started to realise that I only really had 3 options. Either put my head down and grind parachute missions until I hit my goal, gamble everything I own to try to win big, or find a better and faster money making method. The first 2 options really did not appeal to me, so I thought really hard about other methods that I could use to make money. I went on my main account and tested a huge variety of different missions to see if they could be done legally, but no matter what I tried, I always came up empty-handed. That's when it hit me. During the week this was recorded in, there was a triple RP and money event on all open wheel races, which I assume are all completely legal. After starting one of them up, I raced through the track. I then crossed my fingers and hoped for a good payout. That's when I got this. $17,000 per race was miles better than the $2,000 to $3,000 I would get from parachuting. So as this quite literally was the safest and fastest way to hit my goal, I put on my epic gaming gloves and took a swig of my Mountain Dew, preparing for a 2 to 3 hour gaming session, which admittedly isn't really that long, but whatever. Cue the very epic gaming montage. So there you have it, $1 million were made without committing a single crime. We had a lot of mess ups along the way. There were points where I thought that it was literally impossible, but we made it, and despite how frustrating and time consuming this was, it was actually quite fun at times. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this fun but stupid challenge as much as I did. If you want to see more of Nigel and his future misadventures, then please let me know in the comments. Also, if you know of any other ways to make money legally that I didn't use, then please let me know. Because as you could probably tell, I really ran out of ideas towards the end. I look forward to seeing what you guys can come up with. Anyway, I'll see you later.